Hi there, so today we're doing lesson 14.5, which is interpreting histograms. The objective is today then to be able to interpret the data shown on a histogram and to be able to find the population distribution from a histogram. Let's start as normal by checking our prior knowledge then. We need to understand and read information from a group frequency table. We should be able to find the area of a rectangle given the length of its sides, or the length of one of the sides when told the area and the other side. We should also now be able to draw a histogram using frequency density, being able to calculate frequency density as frequency divided by class width. Make sure you're happy with those before you move on. Okay, so we're going to have a look today then at calculating the frequency. So we've rearranged our previous formula for frequency density to find frequency. So remember, frequency is the area of the bar. So it's the frequency density times the class width. So here we've got a histogram then. So across the bottom I've got my time in seconds. My vertical axis we've got our frequency density. And we want to find the frequency. So essentially the frequency is the area of each of the individual bars. To find the area of a rectangle, we do its length times its width. So we're going to do the class width times the frequency density. They give us the same thing. So for the first one then, we've got a class width from 95 to 105, so that's 10. And we've got a frequency density of 0.4. So 0.4 times 10 gives us a frequency for that bar of 4. So that first bar represents 4 people. Our next bar then, we can use the table as well. So from 105 to 110 gives us a class width of 5. And we can see the height of the bar is 1.2. So 1.2 times 5 has a frequency of 6. We do the same for each of those bars. So we're going to look at the height of the next bar is 1.4 and the class width was 5, so that gives us 7. For the next one, we get a frequency of 11. And for the last one, we've got a frequency of 6. So make sure you're happy with that. So essentially we're finding the area of the rectangles, which is telling us the frequency, the number of people that each bar represents. Okay, so we're going to use that information then to help us to find frequencies. So our histogram is showing us the masses of a number of squirrels. So first of all then we're asked to find how many squirrels weigh between 150 and 200 grams. So along our mass we can see 150 is here to 200 here, so it's this bar that we're interested in. So to find the number of squirrels, that's the frequency, so the area of the bar. So that bar is 50 wide by 0.3 high, which gives us 15 squirrels. Okay, I'm going to write the numbers on the bars as I go. That's going to help us when we want to find other values later. Part B then, how many squirrels weigh more than 300 grams? So more than 300 is everybody after the 300 mark, so that's both of these bars together. So I need to find the area of each bar and add those together. So our first bar has 55 squirrels and our second bar has 20, and that gives us 75 squirrels. Part C then, we're asked how many squirrels are there in total. Well, I've already written on each of these bars, so it's just the last bar that we need to find. So we're going to find the frequency of this bar and add it to all of the rest of them. So there are 45 squirrels in that bar, so that gives us a total of 135 squirrels. Part D, estimate the number of squirrels weighing less than 250 grams. So again, we're going to find 250. Now 250 is in the middle of this bar. So I'm going to draw a line up from 250, and then I need the area of these two. So I know the area of this first bar. I now need to find the area of my new bar here. So we know it stopped here at 250, so it must be 50 wide by 0.45 high. And we add that to our 15. So 22.5 plus 15 is 37.5. Now, we're talking about squirrels, and we don't usually have half a squirrel running around, so we're going to round up to 38 squirrels. So we're told here it's an estimate. Remember, when we use the word estimate, it's because we don't know the actual value. So in this bar here, 45 squirrels could have been spread out anywhere throughout the bar. Okay, we've assumed they've been equally spaced, which is why it's an estimate, because that may not be true. And also we've done some rounding to make sure we have whole squirrels at the end. Make sure you're happy with that before you move on. Okay, so your turn then. So you've been given a histogram that shows the distance fans travel to a football match and 3 questions. Pause the video, have a go at answering those. All right, so the first one then, how many fans travelled less than 5 kilometres? So that's this bar here. So we're going to find the area of the bar. 5 times 8 means that one's 40 fans. How many travelled between 5 and 20 kilometres? So the bars between 5 and 20 are those 2. So we're going to find the area of both of them and add them together. So our first bar was 70, our second bar was 240. That gives us 310 fans. And finally, estimate the number of fans who travelled more than 25 kilometres. So we're going to draw a line at 25 kilometres, and we want all the bars that are more than that. So to the right of there, I'm going to find the area of those 2 bars and add those together. So we've got 80 plus 140 is 220 fans. Make sure you've marked your work. Okay, so now we're going to start to have a look at how we can use our histograms to help us with the distribution. We're going to start off by finding the mean. Now remember, a histogram is showing us grouped frequency. So just like a grouped frequency table, we can find the mean in a similar way. So normally if we want to find the mean from a grouped frequency table, we would find the midpoint of the group, multiply it by the frequency to find the total value for that group, and then add all of those groups together to get our overall total. And we would divide that by the total number of people that we have in our survey or in our table. So we're going to do exactly the same here. So the things we need then, we need to know the midpoint of each group and we need to know the frequency. Now I'm going to put them into a table just to make it a little bit easier to organise. So starting off then, I'm going to find the frequency of each of the bars. Now again, I've got to check my scale really carefully here. I've got a bit of an unusual scale. I've got 15 here and 20 here. So in my scale, every 3 small squares is equal to 1. So you will need to make sure that you're happy with the scale of the histogram that you're using. So my first bar then is 1 wide by 6 high. So 1 times 6 is 6. My second bar is 2 wide by 7 high. So 2 times 7 is 14. And I've done that for each of the bars. So I found the frequency by finding the area of each of the bars individually. If I add that together, that gives me a total frequency of 60. So there must have been 60 people who completed this test. We now need to find the midpoint. So we need to find the middle of each group. So my first group goes from 15 to 16. So halfway between 15 and 16 is 15.5. My next group goes from 16 to 18. So halfway is 17. Then I've got 19. 20 to 25, halfway is 22.5, and from 25 to 30, I get 27.5. If you're not sure on where the midpoint is, remember you can add the lower limit of the group and the higher one together. So if I do 20 plus 25, I get 45, and divide that by 2, it gives me my 22.5. So if you're not sure, add the lower and upper limits of your bar and divide them by 2. Finally then, to find the total for each group, we're going to multiply the frequency and the midpoint together. So if we do that for each of the groups, so frequency times midpoint, and then to get the overall total time, we're going to add all of those together. So my total time for everybody is 1,186 minutes. To find the mean, we do our total divided by our frequency. And that gives me 19.8 minutes to 1 decimal place. Make sure you're happy with that. If you need to, you can go back and watch that section again before you have a go. Okay, so your turn then. You've been given a histogram to show the masses of a herd of elephants. You need to estimate the mean mass. I would suggest using a table again to help you. Okay, let's have a look then. So if we find the frequencies then, so on this one our scale from 3 to 4 is 1, and the squares going up are going up in ones as well. So that's 1 times 4 is 4. Then this one from 4 to 5 is here, so this must be 4.5. So from 4 to 4.5 is 0.5, and that's gone up to 18, so that gives you 9. We do the same for each of those. We get a frequency of 12, 15 and 6, which gives a total frequency of 46. The midpoints of each bar then, 3.5. Now again, remember this one is halfway between 4 and 4.5, so that's 4.25, 4.75, 5.25, and our last one from 5.5 up to 7. So remember, you can do 5.5 plus 7 divided by 2 is 6.25. Multiply the frequency and the midpoint to get the total for each group. So 14, 38.25, 57, 78.75, 37.5, and the total tons for everybody there is 225.5. So to find our mean, we're going to do the total tons for all of the elephants divided by the 46 elephants, which means that the mean is 4.9 tons, again to 1 decimal place. Okay, so now that we've been able to find the mean, we're going to have a look at the median. Now the median, remember, is the middle value. There are quite a few steps to this, so you might want to make a note of these steps as we work through this problem together. The first step is to find the frequencies of each bar and the total frequency. So if we find the frequency of each bar and add them together, we get a total frequency of 60. Again, I've written on the bars the frequency of each of those bars individually. We're going to need to use that later. Once we know the total frequency, we can now find which of the groups contains the median. So we want to know which of these bars the median person is in. To find the median, our median formula is n plus 1 divided by 2. It's the same as we used when we were doing cumulative frequency. So in this case, my total number of people is 60, so 60 plus 1 divided by 2 means I need the 30.5th value. So in this group, I've got 6. In this one, I've got 14. So 6 plus 14 is 20. So remember, that's up to the edge of that group. So 6 up to the edge of here, a total of 20. So we're using our cumulative frequencies. Up to the edge of here gives me a total of 40. While I want 30.5, so they must be within this group. Okay, so this one, remember, this edge is 20, this edge is 40. They've got to be in the middle there somewhere. So they are in my 18 to 20 group. My next step is to subtract the frequency of the previous bars from our median value. So our median is 30.5. They're in this group, so I'm going to take away the values from the previous bars, which was 20, and that leaves me 10.5. So that's my first 20 people. I need up to 30.5, so I need 10.5 people from this group. Now this group contains 20 people, so 10.5 is approximately halfway. So I'm just going to draw a line roughly halfway. I can't use this line to take any readings at the minute. I've just drawn it approximately where I think it needs to be. What I now need to do is to work out, well, how far is it from the edge of this bar to my line exactly? Okay, so remember, not reading off the scale, I've got to work out that distance because I've just drawn the line roughly where I think it belongs. So what we do know then is that this little bit of the bar is now equivalent to 10.5 people. So that was my 6, my 20, and that gives me 30.5 people. If I know that the area of this bar is 10.5 for its frequency, and I know the height of the bar, I can work out the width of the bar across here. So we're going to work out the class width. To find the class width then, so area divided by length will give me the other side. So 10.5 divided by 10 gives me 1.05. So the class width across here is 1.05. I know that this bar starts at 18. So if I do 18 plus my 1.05, I get 19.05 minutes. So that is where my line should be. So 19.05. So there's quite a lot of steps there to take in. Again, you may want to replay this section of the video and make more notes before you have a go yourselves. All right, so your turn. So we're back to the elephants again then. So this time you're going to estimate the median. Okay, let's have a look through them. So our first step was to find the frequencies of each bar and the total frequency. So the total frequency there is 46, and I've put the frequencies of each bar on each of those bars. Our next step is to find which group the middle elephant is. So we do our median formula. So 46 plus 1 divided by 2 means I need the 23.5th elephant along. So I count along using my cumulative frequency. So I've got 4 here. 4 plus 9 means I've got 13 up to the edge of here. 13 plus 12 means there's 25 up to the end of this bar. So 23.5 must be in this bar somewhere. So that bar is from 4.5 up to 5. So that's the group that our median is in. So again, now we know they're in this group, we're going to take away the previous groups from that. So the previous groups add to 13. So that leaves me again with 10.5. So I need 10.5 elephants from this bar. So if this bar is 12, 10.5 is quite a bit along that bar. So again, I'm just going to draw a line approximately where I think it should be, just so I can see the bar that I need. So it's that bit of the bar has an area again of 10.5. So I know its area. I know the height of the bar is 24. So we do 10.5 divided by 24 means that the width of this bar here is 0.4375. So now I can read from my scale. So that was for 4.5 here plus my 0.4375 means I get an answer of 4.9375 tons as my median value. Okay, just check through your answers there and make sure you're happy with each of those steps. Finally today then, we're going to have a look at an exam question. So we've been given an incomplete table and an incomplete histogram there about the ages of people in a village. We're asked to use the information in the histogram to complete the table and then complete the histogram. So I'm just going to let you have a few minutes there if you want to pause to have a go yourself. My hint would be you need to first find the values on the frequency density scale. Okay, so let's talk it through then. So to be able to fill in this table, to find the frequency, I need to know the width of the bar, which is fine, but I also need to know the height. And currently we don't have a scale on our frequency density, so we need to fill in that scale first. So we're going to have to work out what that scale should be. Now we're told for the first bar that we've got a class width of 10, and we've got a frequency of 160. So we know the area of the bar is 160 and we know it's 10 wide. So we should be able to find the height. So 160 divided by 10 means that bar must be 16 high. Once we've found the height of one of the bars, we can now use that scale to help us to fill in the rest of the scale. So remember, it has to start at 0 here, so I've got to get from 0 to 16. If I count up all the small squares, there are 40 small squares. So I've got to get from 0 to 16 in 40 small squares. So 16 divided by 40 means each small square is 0.4. Now I'm not going to label each small square as 0.4 because that would be really difficult. So I want to label every 5 squares. So 0.4 times 5 means every 5 squares is 2. So I've gone up and labelled every 5 squares as 2. Okay, that's really important, the first step there. If we don't do that, then we can't work out any of the rest of the question. Now that we've got our axis labels fully labelled, we can now find the frequency of the second bar. So remember, the frequency is the same as the area. So from 10 to 25 is 15 wide. We can see it's 4 high. So 15 times 4 means that first bar has a frequency of 60. Our next bar then from 25 to 30, so that's 5 wide by 8 high. That gives us a frequency of 40. So that's our first 2 marks. So we have to do quite a bit to get those first 2 marks. Lastly then, we're going to draw the rest of the histogram. So from 30 to 40, we've got a frequency of 100. So we need to work out the frequency density. So again, we know the area of the bar and we know that it's 10 wide. We need to work out the height. So 100 divided by 10 means it needs to be 10 high. So between 30 and 40, we're going to draw a bar 10 high. And finally then, we've got our frequency of 120. Our class width this time is 30. So we're going to do 120 divided by 30, which gives us a height of 4. So between 40 and 70, our bar is 4 high. And that gives us our final 2 marks. Okay, thank you for working through that today. There's quite a lot in there, so you may need to watch this video a couple of times before you fully understand how to find those, particularly with the mean and the median.